Hi, my name is Aysia Marotta, and I am from Brooklyn, New York. I got into photography very early on in my life. Unknowingly, my parents always had cameras in my face, and my grandparents kept dozens of photo albums of each family member. Going through all these photo albums and even seeing photos that I'd taken as early as like 4 years old, because I remember pestering my family members to pass me over the disposables and my granddad really letting me having fun with it. I started my career in film. I went to college for documentary film production at Brooklyn College and aspired to be a DP, which is still work I kind of do from time to time. But I was navigating going to college part time and working in film. And I'd gotten an opportunity from a friend of a friend to take my Nikon D40 DSLR that I'd had at the time and photograph a band for him in Brooklyn, which I'd never done it before. I ended up photographing the Maccabees at Music Hall of Williamsburg. That is when my love affair with photography and especially in live music really began. The biggest thing I think is that, like, first and foremost, before I consider myself a music photographer, I consider myself an audiophile. I don't really know many music photographers that do what they do and don't love music, like aren't just absolutely drowning in music on a day-to-day basis. And that's very much how I've always lived my life. Everything I've done in my life has been driven by music. So naturally, it kind of led me here. And I think expressing that kind of sentiment to the artists that I first started working with early on, just expressing to them that I love their music and I want to capture them performing their music and in their element, and showing a respect for the artist and pushing to kind of convey that respect through my photography is what got my foot in the door. These artists kind of took off and I worked very closely with the labels. So it all really does start with the artist and building a good reputation with them. That reputation will translate over to the many people that they will end up working with in the future also. There was a really long period of time where I didn't feel confident enough to send emails that I eventually ended up sending, but it all boils down to what's the worst that could happen? They say no. You either keep pushing through other avenues or you move on to another artist, and it works out. It does, because people do respect ambition and drive and confidence. So even if you're not feeling the confidence that you'd want to be feeling in that moment when you're sending the email, just send it. The number one piece of advice I could give to any aspiring photographer, especially a music photographer, is to definitely don't take no for an answer. That's not to say to do things in a illegal way or a dangerous way, but you're going to get a lot of no's in the beginning. And that's a hard thing to hear when you're trying to build a portfolio in music photography. So the best route is to just kind of reach out to every single person you can find, whether that be other photographers who've shot the artist that you've photographed or direct to labels. Just pitch what you're wanting to do with no fear. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? They say no. There will always be a way in, and it might not be immediate, but as long as you don't give up after hearing your first dozen no's, you'll see that that'll build your reputation a bit better, because those no's that you've received will one day become yeses. And a lot of it is unpaid in the beginning too. So definitely prepare yourselves for that. But it does pay. It'll pay, and stand up for yourself when it comes to rates, because you are working. That's the number one thing about music photography that I think a lot of people don't understand who don't work in the music industry, is that it's fun. It's great. You're getting to go to a gig and photograph this artist, but you're still working. And I think that's why it's very hard to be taken seriously as a music photographer nowadays, because society writes off a job that you enjoy as not a job, but it's still a job. So definitely always fight for yourself, because no one else is going to fight harder for you than you will. I find that in order for me to get my subject to be super relaxed in front of me during my portraiture work, I just have them come in as though they're an old friend and that we're not here to capture anything that's business related. And this is just a fun experience for both of us. So from the start, I'll have them come in and just we'll start talking about music, whether they're an artist in the music industry or not. That's my go-to, mostly because I like to find new music through the people that I'm photographing also and share music with them too. So yeah, it's all about making them feel comfortable through conversation and letting them know that the camera isn't really the most present thing in the room. And that's really it. In regards to social media, I would say the number one way it helped me in my career is expanding my perspective on photography and avenues in which to take my photography. It's definitely adjusted my frame of mind to what kind of visual elements I want to be creating in the long run. And I find that social media has definitely embraced my wanting to keep myself in a video element as well, where my work isn't so structured just around photography, but also kind of navigated me back toward working in film and producing. All that being said, social media has definitely made me feel very pressured to constantly be creating things and having to push for myself and advocate for myself, which is great, but it's a full-time job in itself. So it's hard to kind of balance creating art for myself that I'm happy to share with the world and then creating art for people on the internet to then push myself to be seen so that I can keep creating the art that I want to be creating. There's been some moments recently where I felt like I'm on this deadline that I have to post something in order to keep myself relevant, in order to be seen, in order to keep booking jobs. And I don't want to feel that way. I feel like social media has kind of stripped the organic recruit of booking jobs. I feel like with social media, I wouldn't have found a lot of the other artists that inspire me so greatly and that I've connected with, that I've worked with. But then I also feel like maybe I would have more confidence in my work if it didn't exist.